My name is James E. Shelby, Shelby. I'm going into the Army at 26 years old, which is old for old men like me.
Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
I was drafted into the Army after 4 deferments. I kept getting deferments from my company, and that's what took me so long to get into the Army. Like I say, I was drafted, and I would not have joined the Army if I had any brains at the time. But I was glad I was drafted because I became a very important cog. I'm sorry. But I would not have gone into the Army if I knew how tough it was going to be.
Where did you go for basic training?
I basic training, I went to Fort Hays, Columbus, Ohio, and then to, no, that's, you got me stung there.
I think it was like Fort Benning, wasn't it?
And then I went to Fort Benning from there, and then from there I went to Fort Benning. Okay. At Fort Benning, I later signed up because they asked me to become a second lieutenant in the American Army. I did go to OCS, Officers Training School, and I did stay in until the 12th week. And I found out in the 12th week that I was going to be deferred to Japan. I did not want to go to Japan because my precious wife was going to be pregnant soon. So I asked that I be deferred or sent to regular work at the mills company, which I did, and I was released to the mills company, which I was working at before.
Okay. Well, if I may interrupt you here, after you decided you didn't want to become an officer,
I did decide I did not want to be an officer because my wife needed me at home.
Okay. But you ended up in Fort Bragg, though, as I recall, did you not?
Yes, from there, I went to Fort Bragg, and then I went to Fort Kevin. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just got a cough.
Yes.
Again, of all the times.
Well, in Fort Bragg, it's my understanding that you went into airborne training there.
That's right. I was airborne. Yeah. I went into the 17th Airborne, which is a new outfit. I did become corporal at Fort Bragg, and then I went to officers training school again. I did not stay there. I would be repeating myself.
Okay.
I did not stay at officers training because I had a chance to become master sergeant through the help of corporal, or through the help of all the colonels there.
Yeah. There was a Colonel Stubbs, yeah? You mentioned a Colonel Stubbs that kind of took a liking to you.
I did mention that I was liked at Fort Bragg, and I did have a good friend in Colonel Stubbs who told me to stay in because they needed me. I did stand just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I did stay at hold on.
Mm-hmm.
I did stay at
Take your time. Take your time.
I did become a master sergeant through the help of other officers at the camp. I was glad I did because I won a lot of notoriety being in the 17th Airborne at that time.
Now, when you were still at Fort Bragg, did you go through glider training?
I went through glider training, and the big thing is I made more money. At the end, I was making more than the colonel would have made.
I think you told me that when you were in glider training.
I went to glider training.
Yeah, but you weren't trained as a pilot, though, were you?
No, I wasn't.
But yet you landed a plane.
I landed after the pilot became a nervous breakdown, and I had 13 guys in the glider. I brought the glider down. This was in England. I crashed through a fence, landing, but nobody was hurt.
Oh.
I had great notoriety with that relief of the people's lives.
Sure. Well, how did you get to England? Did you fly there, or did you take a sail
I went
across?
to England on a boat that was attacked by submarines, or going to be attacked by submarines on the Atlantic Ocean. We spent one day drifting in the Atlantic Ocean because we had the alarm. The U-boats were in that area. Thank God we didn't get hit with a bomb. But before that, we got to England on this big boat, and we got another alert. The U-boats were in the area, and that was 2 hours from England. We drifted for maybe 2 days in the Atlantic, and never did, thank God, get hit with any bombs.
Yeah. Well, when you made it to England, where were you stationed?
When I went to England, I was in Swindon, England, and we landed in Liverpool, England, and from Liverpool, we were when we got to England, we didn't have any food for breakfast because we had drifted so long that we used that time up. That night, when we got to England, we were getting off of the boat, and the glorious and beautiful Salvation Army was out there at midnight feeding thousands of guys donuts and tea. To this day, there's nobody as precious as the Salvation Army that saved our lives by feeding us.
Okay.
And
Now, you had mentioned, again, when we first met, that on Christmas Eve of 1944, the Battle of the Bulge was already raging, and you were going to be flying over there.
That's right.
Can you tell us what happened when you took off on that flight?
Well, we took off. What was it again? Anyhow?
Well, if you mentioned that then on that flight it was a snowy day.
Oh, it was a bad snowy day.
Yeah.
And our plane, I'm very sorry, I had an
That's okay.
awful cough.
Oh, no problem.
But that snowy day, we did.
Well, what happened when your plane took off?
Our plane took off, so, and it was hit with another plane behind us, and in that plane was 3 or 4 band leaders who lost their lives. They went directly into the ocean.
Oh.
I was very lucky not to get killed.
Yeah.
And I was saved by, again, crashing into the woods.
Yeah. So you mentioned your plane landed in the trees.
My plane landed in the trees and we got smashed up. And then we got picked up by the French underground and taken to St. Vith by truck.
So that was after you had another flight then that went overseas.
That's right.
And you were supposed to land in Belgium, but you ended up landing in France. Huh?
France,
Yeah.
So we fought in St. Vith. We weren't supposed to with us where I landed, and I fought with the Free French. And at that time, I bought out a bottle of Gordon's gin I had in my coat from England. It was a pint size. The MP there challenged me with a gun to my neck, and to give him the password. I did not know the password, so I pulled out the bottle of Gordon's gin, and the two sergeants, myself, and those 3 friends, we kind of took the gin in hand and drank it that night. It was about the best piece of gin I ever had.
So you shared the gin with the MPs?
With everybody we had a party there
Okay.
during the war.
All right. Well, after you managed to pass the security of the MPs, where did you go to? Where were you in the Battle of the Bulge? Do you recall what city were you fighting in?
I stayed in St. Vith and waited for my outfit to show up there. They seemed to rescue me after they found out where I was. It was a mixed-up ordeal. Everything was mixed up in those days. And after, I'm very sorry. This darn cough is really bothering me. Anyhow,
Were you wounded there in the Bastogne area?
no, I was not wounded there. Later on, I fought with the army with St. Bastogne,
Bastogne, yeah.
and I was wounded in the back from a 88 German mortar. That was after a Sergeant Welch and myself, Jim Shelby. I was hit with a mortar when I was putting out a yellow flag to let the American pilots know where we were. We had called the pilots and told them that our line was behind the yellow flag. But the Germans saw it and they did hit me in the back with a mortar.
Well, what happened to you after you got wounded? How were you cared for?
Well, I went to American field camp, and I was in deep sorrow. I cried. I was crying so bad because my back was hurting me.
Were these hospitals, were they just tents?
Just tents,
Yeah.
field tents, and doctors in there. I could not see them. Mortar had almost blinded me. So after that, I got in better shape, and here I am, showing you what happened and how it happened.
What happened after you, how long were you in the hospital? Do you recall?
I was in the hospital 3 days,
3 days.
and it was they took me to England from there, and I started crying. I couldn't stop crying. I was hurting.
Oh.
So that's my life up to then. And after that, I was appointed by Major Stubbs to run a hotel in Evian, France. This hotel was a mammoth hotel. I had
Was that experience while the war was still going on or after the war ended?
after the war ended, I was assigned to this hotel, and I had a employee bunch of Germans and Americans of over 100 guys. The Germans had left 25 and the Americans had 75. I run this hotel for close to four years. And then it got back in an organization, and after that, it closed. It didn't close, but it put it back in somebody else's hands, but the Army. And I was lucky enough to have that experience of running. At the end, I had over 200 employees, and I had never had to pay money. It was all lend-lease.
Well, let me bring you back, if I may, sir, to while the war was still going on. After you left the hospital in England, I think you told me that you somehow finagled the opportunity to get assigned to a command post.
Pardon again?
That you were assigned to a command post, and that you had General Patton stop by.
Oh, yeah. General Patton and became my best friend. I don't know how, but he did. And I not to be bragging, but I did become a very good and master sergeant. I did do a good job, and I did make some money at the end being in a master sergeant. I came home, and they asked me to stay in the Army, and I said, no way. So that's what happened up to now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring you back though to the war, if I may. It's my understanding that you actually went over into Germany while the war was going on, and you crossed the Ur River,
So,
and that was something on a Bailey Bridge.
well,
What is a Bailey Bridge?
well, when we left England, we knew we were going to be in a tough battle through help of our own spies helping us. I did take probably 4 bottles of gin, about 5 or 6 fruit cakes, and all the stuff that goes with it, and cigars, Optimo cigars. We bought that with us in the trailer of one of the captains, and we marked on the side, Captain somebody, and nobody interfered with it. It went all through the war without anybody touching it. And when my son Jim was born in January 15th, I pulled out the trailer from the field and had a Jim and Shelby breakfast that morning. And when the guys come in to report to me, I offer them cake, fruit cake, Optimo gin, cigars, and other small food mixes. And we had it at 2 o'clock in the morning on the Our River in France. That was all my treat that I had saved all the way through the war. And I was real happy with it. And so was the Army. They like it. They love that feature, which will never happen again, I think.
Well, after you crossed into Germany, I think you mentioned previously that you had also gone into Cologne.
Pardon?
That you also served in Cologne.
Oh, yes. I was in Cologne.
What did you do there? Were you in fighting, or was this after the city was taken?
When we went into Cologne, I'm just trying to remember what we did. I remember Cologne, yes. I did get around, but it was like a normal day in those days.
Let me ask you this. We met about a week or so ago, and I had the opportunity and the honor to meeting you and to hear your stories of your adventures in World War II. You had mentioned at that time that you were in counterintelligence in Essen.
That's what you just showed me.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
All right. When I later on in my Army life, I was assigned to the Counterintelligence Corps in Essen, Germany. Not Essen, Germany, but what was that?
No, I think it was Essen, Germany.
Essen, Germany, you're right.
Yes.
And I was given a Opel convertible that I could drive. And at night we would pick up former German spies, and we would arrest them, and I would take them to a compound. And one day we would pick up spies we had picked up the night before, German spies. And this one pretty lady asked me if I had ever danced at Euclid Beach, Euclid, Ohio. And I had danced there before, and I knew I was close to Euclid Beach. And she said she danced there many times with guys from Euclid Beach. And I was so surprised that this German spy would tell me that story.
So she was sent over by Germany prior to the war.
She was sent over by Germany to be a spy.
Wow.
Spoke perfect English and everything else, and a very pretty girl.
Okay.
So, yes, I did dance with some girls from there, but I never knew who the hell they were. So.
Okay. Now, it's you told me a story before that I found very fascinating. That after the war, I think it was, you were in the Black Forest.
Oh, yeah, many days after that encounter with the German spy, I was in the Black Forest with two other fellows that are kitchen chefs. So said if we got him a deer, he would have it dressed and we could eat it. So we were hunting deer in the Black Forest, and we did not see a deer, but as we were going through the Black Forest, we saw smoke coming out of the chimney of one of these cottages. My driver stopped and knocked at the door, and the guy comes to the door with his hands up, surrendering. He got back to the Jeep. He said, I can't figure it out. The guy's surrendering. We found out when this was
It was Franz von Papen, was it?
Franz von Papen, and he was the German chancellor. He was Hitler's spy. He was Hitler's man, and he was a tough guy. And the funny part, he did belong to the Catholic Church, and he was a German spy.
Yes, you're right. As I recall, von Papen was at one time back in 1933 the chancellor of.
That's right. He was the chancellor.
32, the chancellor of Germany.
Of Germany.
And then when Hitler took over, he was the vice chancellor for
That's
several
right.
years.
Right, he was. He was vice chancellor. So we did do something great by accidentally capturing von Papen.
Did you get credit for that?
I got no credit for it because we captured him, and I got the MPs to come down and arrest him. So they got credit for arresting him.
Yeah.
So that was the end of von Papen and how we caught him.
He was later tried at Nuremberg, I think, and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Yeah. So
I've got some beautiful, not beautiful, but some good pictures of von Papen and his son trying to escape in the Black Forest.
I have one more item here I'd like to bring up, if I may. You had mentioned that you had a friend. Let's see if I can recall his name. Fritz Greener.
Well,
and he did something unusual. Then.
Yeah, very many months after my good friend and I were on our way to Berlin for another company duty, and the Russians would not let us through to Berlin for some reason. So they told us to go back to this airport, and there'll be a light going on the porch. Go in that place and knock at the door, and they'll put us up to sleep. So we went back to that and knocked at the door, and the guy opened the door. This was about midnight on that particular night, and it was a guy named Fritz Greener. Fritz Greener was a neighbor of mine on Roger Road in Cleveland. In the kitchen, Fritz had cheap watches laying on the kitchen table with the backs off, and he was dipping the little tips of gears with ruby red nail polish. He was selling them to the Russians for a good amount of money. They thought they were opals.
Mhm.
They were nothing but cheap 98-cent watches by my Ingersoll. He
Okay.
was making a fortune in his own kitchen. So that was my story of my rich neighbor making a killing on the market.
All right. Let me see if there are any other points that we failed to cover. Gentlemen, do you have any other questions that you would like your father to address?
He skipped over Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, where he went for airborne training and
Really?
met Omar Bradley.
Okay.
Omar Bradley bought him a Sunday.
Oh, flashing back to the United States,
Okay.
when I first took basic training, I walked into a drugstore near New Orleans, and I was still in basic training.
What was do you recall the name of the army post? Do you recall the name of the army post where you were having the training?
That was Fort
Claiborne, was it?
Claiborne
Okay.
in Louisiana.
Okay.
And the place was jammed with guys having their first furlough. And as I walked into the drugstore, I couldn't find this place to sit. So I just sat down next to other guy who had nobody sitting next to him. So I said, "Hey, buddy, you care if I sit with you?" He said, "Sit down, soldier." He said, "What's your name, soldier?" I said, "James Shelby." He said, "You're not James Shelby. You're private first class Shelby." I said, "I know I'm private first class. Is that my name?" He said, "From now on is your name." And it was Lieutenant Bradley,
Omar Bradley?
Omar Bradley.
Oh.
So from then on, every time I saw Colonel Bradley, I would say to him, "Colonel Bradley," he said, "I remember you." He always named me Private First Class, and that was a surprise to me. My name was changed. That's how I got in touch with Omar Bradley.
Okay.
That's I had a number of experiences, and that was a main one. Thank you.
Is there anything else?
There's a lot more, but
There's a lot more.
I'm ready to. Right now, I don't have enough to fill anything up.
Okay. Well, I think we have a lot of good information here, and perhaps the opportunity might arise where we'd be able to meet again and capture some of the stories that were kind of missed. But I want to thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you, and certainly an honor meeting you and to hear your stories.
I feel so great that I'm so bad that I have messed up this interview with my cough, but all of a sudden I just can't complete a sentence without coughing.
I understand.
Thank you, and thank you a lot,
Okay.
Jim Shelby.